Thank you very much. Thank you very much. That's the nicest thing that anyone's ever done for me. A Christmas Carol by Dickens. Queen Victoria, a wonderful leader. And then there's my hero, Ebenezer Scrooge. Thank you very much for all this knowledge. Thank you very much for all this talent. Thank you very much, Mr. Dickens, Mrs. Victoria. Thank you very, very, very much. Oh, thank you very, very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is James Willert, and I'm a special education teacher. And I have experienced a lot of different versions of the Christmas Carol. Books and movies, different actors, and they're all great. But have you ever read the novel of the Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens? I have. And there's a lot more to it than you think. So, I'm going to present the Christmas Carol, which was influenced by the Victorian period in English literature. The utilitarianism, social change, and the Industrial Revolution. This novel is about a man of genius who found himself losing humanism. And yet, he was visited by 3 ghosts, and he was able to find his compassion and empathy. My goal as a special education teacher is to demonstrate the role of the Victorian era and about the overarching themes, the styles, the conventions, and the different philosophies in the novels of the period, and provoke thought into characters like my hero, Ebenezer Scrooge. Was he a hero or was he a villain? Now, the Victorian period's influence in English literature covered the years from 1883 to 1901. The era brought change reflected by the influence of the Industrial Revolution and the reign of Queen Victoria, who stressed high morals, modesty, and proper decorum. The literature of this period is often concerned with social reform, hardship, and moral challenges. The utilitarian concepts greatly influenced and motivated Charles Dickens' masterpiece, The Christmas Carol. And the character development of Ebenezer Scrooge, who in my opinion, my own opinion, an unlikely hero, to me, I found to be a hero. Now, novelists of the time clearly demonstrate realistic portraits of difficult lives, because back then it was tough. They had to deal with work, perseverance, duty, and personal tragedy. Even the wrongdoers lost in the end. There was dark poverty of the era championed the need for optimism and belief that scientific, technological, political, socio-economic, and industrial invention would pave the way to a better life. We all want a better life. A utilitarian society tells us, back then, that we can choose any situation of choice. Choose the action and maximize the overall action with overall happiness or pleasure. All people were affected by this because Ebenezer Scrooge in The Christmas Carol did his job completely and really well without emotion or humanism. Now, the Victorian novelist, Charles Dickens here, he was popular. His characters came to life on paper. And Dickens even shared his own commentary from his own growing up as a kid. And sometimes I think many of his stories were because of what he experienced in those tough times. And so we come back to my hero, Ebenezer Scrooge. I want to note here, though, folks, that Dickens saw a gravestone in a cemetery, and that inspired the whole story. So let's talk about Ebenezer Scrooge, shall we? The unlikely hero. Ebenezer Scrooge, in the movies, You know, some of the books says he was a miser, grouchy, and crabby. Don't we all get grouchy and crabby sometimes? We all do. But he had something that a lot of people didn't have. Resilience. He would go do his job. He would do his work and do it well. No warmth, no hi, how are you? But he did his job. And he took calculated risks as a businessman. He could have failed, but he didn't. He stayed with it. And in the novel, in the movies, in the books, we never read about Scrooge lying as a businessman or being, unworthy, defrauding anybody, No. Or cheating on the business world. Nothing. Nada. So Scrooge was a hard-nosed, successful businessman. And I admire that. In my own family, I've had folks I love very much. But some of them didn't follow through with the tough times. And Scrooge did. So Scrooge has inspired me to be resilient and never give up. So in conclusion, my objective here for you folks is to let you know that people like Ebenezer Scrooge never quits. And I also want to say in that time period, in the Victorian time period, what really caught my eye was back then children were required to learn to read clearly. And that encouraged growth in the literary world. And so many writers came out to be very successful. Charles Dickens, The Christmas Carol, and Walter Scott, Rob Roy, great movie with Liam Neeson. And so, what would happen, folks, without that period? So Ebenezer Scrooge, if he gave up on his goals, said, too hard, I give up. What would have happened to Bob Cratchit? To Tiny Tim? What would happen to folks like me that need someone to admire and never give up? And so thank you. And one more item. Read the novel, The Christmas Carol. It's worth it. It's worth your time. Thank you and good night.